Okay, we're recording, Sandra?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. This is the Pacific Grove City Council meeting tonight, Wednesday, December 18th, 2024. It is 5:30 p.m. for the special meeting set for tonight. I'm going to call this meeting to order, and Madam Clerk, do we take a roll call this time?
And do a roll call, or you can just acknowledge that everyone is present at this.
Okay, yes, that's right. The entire council is present as currently constituted 6 members. And I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda item for the special meeting. We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Emilio, second by Councilmember Paduri. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll take a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing no dissent, we'll go ahead and take public comment on the item. Is that correct, Mr. City Attorney?
Why don't I announce it first so people know what they're commenting on? And
Oh, that's a good point.
okay. Yes, we have one closed session this evening. It's a conference with legal counsel. It's existing litigation, which is authorized pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1. The name of the case is Anayati versus City of Pacific Grove. The case number is in the agenda.
Thank you very much. There's only one member of the public here in chambers. Mr. Panero, would you like to make a comment on this item? Okay, and anybody online would like to make a comment on this closed session item?
No online hands are raised.
We'll go ahead and close public comment, and we'll go ahead and adjourn to closed session for action on the item.
Recording stopped.
And, by any here?
Recording in progress.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Pacific Grove City Council meeting of Wednesday, December 18th, 2024. It's 6 p.m. and this is our regularly scheduled meeting tonight. And I'm going to call this meeting to order at this time. I'm going to note that all 6 council members are present. And please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Now I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Second. Okay, motion by Councilmember Durian, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Emilio. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and take a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing no dissent, passes unanimously. We'll proceed on the agenda. And number 2, I don't think we have any presentations today, so we'll go ahead and move it on to council and staff announcements. And I'll recognize the city attorney on 3A.
Yes, we had a closed session earlier this evening and there's no reportable action from the closed session.
Thank you very much. Do we have any staff announcements this evening? I have a couple, Mr. Mayor. The first one is just for the public's general knowledge. City Hall will, for the most part, remain open during the holidays. We will close on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and New Year's Day. Other than that, it'll be normal business hours. On January 8th, we're going to talk a little bit more about this later tonight, but I want to make sure that everybody's aware. On January 8th, we're going to have a community workshop for our CVRA districting item that we're going to talk about later tonight. This will be an informal workshop for the public to come and get a presentation from the demographer and ask questions at that point. So it's more of an informal, there will be no council seated at the dais or anything. So that'll be a different style of meeting, and you'll get to get some hands-on training if you want on the mapping software. So that's happening as well. The other thing, just to, kind of, I guess, recap over the weekend, we all saw a significant wind event that we didn't necessarily see coming to quite that strength is what our emergency services felt. So we had a number of staff members that were working that were able to step in and help out where they needed it. As we mentioned, it was primarily the damage was from wind. And so the fire department did have to respond to a tree that fell on the back of the Gateway Center, which resulted in a gas line break and a water break. And at the end of the day, working with the building official and the fire department releasing it, they were able to get back into half of the building. And they also had to coordinate with the Red Cross and with the Silmar in case they needed to move some people over there. But they're working on getting everybody back in that building. Also wanted to just note that, the loss of the power obviously continues to be a real frustration in this, not only in Pacific Grove, but in Monterey and Carmel and other communities around us. So we will, continue to advocate for our communities to PG&E to try to move them ahead where we can. I was looking on their 2024 to 2026 undergrounding project of 10,000 miles. And unfortunately, Monterey County is not on that. But I do think there's some additional information we can put in front of them, such as our recent fire assessment that was done to try and, make Monterey County more of an interest for them to pay attention to us. So we have talked about partnering more and trying to put more pressure on PG&E where we can. We also have a brand new rep, as you've been introduced to at PG&E, who's going to help to keep us more informed in the next time. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Oh, thank you very much. And thank you for working on this on behalf of our town with PG&E. It's really important. It's tough when the power goes out and all of our businesses and schools and everything. It's tough on everybody. So thank you so much for doing that. I'll go ahead and recognize my fellow council members for any reports that they may have at this time. Mayor Pro Tem Amelia.
Just real quick, a couple of weeks ago, December 7th, USS Arizona went down, and that was on December 7th that we were attacked in Pearl Harbor. Just the memory of those people, but World War II took quite a few deaths on that one too. But December 7th was only a couple of weeks ago, so that's what I wanted to bring up. That's it.
Thank you, Councilman McDonald.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to let people know, if you didn't know already, that MC Gives is open to help extend any donation you'd like to make through the end of the year. And for anybody who's not familiar, Community Human Services helps our community by providing homeless services, mental health services, and substance abuse services. And it's for all of Monterey County. And so they help us with that aspect of us. So if you'd be interested in giving to them, I just wanted to make people more aware of what they do for us. And you can find them by looking for them through Community Foundation for Monterey County with Community Human Services in the memo line. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, and I do have one thing. I wanted to remind everybody that we have our boards and commissions applications. We're extending it until Friday at 5 p.m. because of actions that may or may not occur tonight relating to the EDC. So we're going to go ahead and entertain some applications from everybody, not just EDC members, until 5 p.m. on Friday. So if you had a previous application, you can simply revise it, change the title of whatever board you'd wish to apply for. And I've noticed we're receiving a lot of applications now, so that's great. Go ahead and move it on to general public comment at this time. These are general public comment deals with matters that are in the subject matter jurisdiction of the city, but that do not appear on a regular agenda. So if you have a general public comment at this time, I'm going to take those folks in chambers first. Thank you very much, Mr. Hewitt.
Good evening, Mayor Smith and council members. I'm Robert Hewitt. I'm a resident of Pacific Grove, and I'm a member of the Heritage Society Board of Directors, and that's why I'm here this evening. First of all, I want to thank you on behalf of the Heritage Society for moving ahead with seeking National Historic Status designation for Chautauqua Hall. It is a genuine historic treasure and well-deserving of such recognition, and we're all hoping that that will be successful. But it also needs work, as detailed in the assessment report that was commissioned by the city and prepared by Wisjani Elster Associates. The Heritage Society has formed a committee, Friends of Chautauqua Hall, to raise money that is dedicated entirely to restoration of the building. And we've set a goal of $1 million. I'm very happy to report tonight that the fundraising is going very well. Contributions have already exceeded, my notes say $150,000, raise that to $160,000 because we just received another $10,000 contribution. The people of Pacific Grove and other places have just been very generous. Now, as you consider next year's capital improvements program, we're hoping that you will see these contributions as an available source of funding for Chautauqua Hall restoration projects. Heritage Society really appreciates this opportunity to partner with the city in the preservation of a significant historic building and a valuable community asset. So what if one of your constituents comes up to you at Grove Market and asks, how could they help? Well, Jeannie Anton, who is the chair of the Friends of Chautauqua Hall, is here tonight, and she's going to explain that to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Market, the other meeting house, right? So first of all, congratulations to the new council members and the new mayor. I'm just here to let you know that any contributions to the fund that we've established and are growing daily can be reached through the Heritage Society of Pacific Grove's website. I also put flyers out in the entry room out there because we also have a way of donating directly through a QR code, and on our website there's a donate button that you can just donate directly to, or you can write a check and send it to the Heritage Society. So I appreciate all the donors so far. Most are local. A few have houses here, maybe part-time other places, but We've really reached out to the local community, and I've been very, very thankful and pleased and proud that we've done so well just in the 3 months that we've had this project going. So thank you for all of your help in the future.
Thank you, Ms. Anton. Appreciate it.
Carmelita Garcia, resident of Pacific Grove. You know, that's what makes Pacific Grove such a unique community, when our people get together like this and, really advocate for a cause that's going to benefit all of us as a whole. Just to back up, Mayor, the agenda wasn't approved, but, it's water under the bridge. Anyway, so I'm here, a comment about PG&E and when we all lose our power. So yes, it not only impacts our businesses and schools, but we have an enormous senior population. Some of those folks are on oxygen and other medical necessities that might require electricity to function. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And so as you begin to explore the budget, I think it's time that the city look at the business tax cap, which is $3,000, and begin exploring our big box grocery stores and whether or not $3,000 is an equitable amount that they should be paying with regards to our business tax. Personally, I think it should be increased big time because although we have supermarkets here in Pacific Grove, there's a whole chain of them that they can rely on should they not be meeting revenue, which I doubt would ever be an issue. But I think it's high time that the council begin exploring that avenue. I think it would provide a big boost in the budget. So thank you.
Any further people in the chambers would like to speak, please queue up here to the front.
Good evening. My name is Tony Amaranti, and I'm a volunteer docent at the Point Pinos Lighthouse. And of course, I can remind you, you already know this, I'm sure, that the light was first commissioned on February 1st, 1855. So next year on February 1st, it'll be 170 years that the light's been commissioned. And I'm also part of a volunteer docent group. We've been planning a birthday celebration for February 1st, God willing that the weather is good. And I have a little statement I'd like to read here. I guess it never hurts to ask, right? So February 1st, 2025 is the 170th anniversary of the lighting of the lamp at Point Pinos Lighthouse. On this day, we are planning a celebration at the lighthouse with food, music, games, and lectures on the history of the lighthouse and its light keepers. We would like the City of Pacific Grove to make a proclamation that this will be Point Pinos Lighthouse Day and encourage all to come. Since this is such a special occasion, we would like the City Council to consider waiving the standard entrance fees for the museum, and we will try to encourage visitors to provide a donation to the continuing operations of the lighthouse instead of the entrance fee. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sure we'll hear back if you guys decide to approve, right?
Yeah, we can talk internally about that. Anyone else in chambers? Mr. City Manager, you can take a note on that for me. Thank you.
Mayor, Council, Mike Gibbs, member of the EDC, maybe. I'm here to just public comment. We have new members. You'll be appointing a new council member and new BCC folks. And, the urge is when you appoint people or you act on behalf of people, you want to move fast and, break things sometimes. And that may be happening tonight. I don't know. But the thing is that with new leaders and people in power, there are three, from my experience anyway, I'm not telling you, you already know this. Three things happen. You want to project your personal preferences on the constituency. Okay, you ran on those things probably. But then sometimes you ignore the client. Can't have that happen, which builds resistance along the way. And, some of you probably read the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, and he talks about a couple of different levels of leadership. The first level, number 4, is successful leaders are successful because they're egocentric and they get things done through their personal charisma and power. but there's a limit to the ability of those people to get things done because they tend to serve those wishes that serve themselves. Level 4 is more of a servant leadership person, right? They don't have to win. They don't have to be ego driven. They don't have to be the ones at the front. And they are the ones that tend to be more successful for the long term, right? So just a quick story. Peggy and I went over to see the Carmel mayor be inducted or sworn in. And I was going out to the car with him. We happened to go at the same time to get something out of the car. And I was walking along and he stopped and he bent over. This is Dale Byrne. He's going to be sworn in and took a cigarette butt off the pavement. Oh, that's pretty cool. So he bent over and he had something in his back pocket. I said, well, Dale, what's that thing? He pulled it out and showed it to me. He said, that looks like a paint scraper, doesn't it? And he goes, no, I use that to scrape gum off the sidewalk. He's been doing that for 4 years. He kept this. So my message is when y'all go out, be out in the community. It's okay to take part in stuff. For 4 years, he picked up cigarette butts. I don't know, 150,000 of them with he and his team. And he personally scraped the gum off the sidewalk. Get out, participate. And when you fill this seat over here, find somebody who's willing to do that, who's got experience, represents the business community, and is not afraid to get in there and mix it up with the community. So Mayor Smith, this is your gum scraper. We'll have it inscribed for you and we'll have it delivered so you can carry it around in your car. If you see gum, you can just pull it right out. Scrape the gum off the
Your
pavement.
time's almost up here.
What's that?
Your time's just about up.
Oh, I thought you were gonna tell me what color you wanted your scraper in.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we'll go ahead and go out to the online comment to see if anyone would like to make public comment online.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of hands raised. Christy?
Mute. I just wanted to address and still trying to get it completely figured out. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, last week during, I guess it was a suggestion because it wasn't on the agenda, but the whole issue about wanting a land acknowledgement could hardly understand everything. And also, I couldn't find this in the minutes. So that's not. Can I go on or?
Yes, please.
Okay, I don't know what's going off and on. I think it's a distraction. It's unnecessary. It's a time suck. And I just, with all respect, think that we all have to move on from the infractions and transgressions of our ancestors. And as this small city, I mean, again, I don't mean any disrespect, but perhaps we could pay attention to the populace and current situation that the council's time and attention could be better spent on. And thank you, Mr. Mogensen, for bringing up the whole PG&E issue, because here we go again, and it was only storm number 1. And so I think focusing this council could be focusing on the infrastructure issues and this whole PG&E every single year. It should be a priority with partnering with PG&E state leaders. And I think PG, either staff or with council, again, appealing for grant money from the state of the feds for money that was made available to fix issues when one of the largest infrastructure acts in decades was passed. Like a few years ago. Anyway, there's enough current issues that need to be addressed, not continually rehashing and digging up ancient history over and over. And, you know, if someone has an emotional attachment to the Costanoan Esalen Native Americans, to me, Ms. Rao and Lisa Shiani, who also agreed, they could maybe, partner and get involved and support the California Council of Land Trust, who just awarded 2 million in funding and is engaged in land trusts, to support these tribes. Anyway, thank you.
Nancy Parsons? Nancy Parsons? Nancy Parsons? It seems she's having some issues.
Are there any other people online?
No, she's the last hand raised.
Okay, we're gonna go,
Oh.
someone just popped up.
Oh, somebody just popped up and they lowered their hand.
Okay,
I
we're gonna go ahead and close public comment at this time, bring it back to the council, move on to item 5, move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda deals with routine and non-controversial matters. So I will ask, is there anyone in the public, or I'm sorry, on the council wishing to pull a consent agenda item? And is there anyone in the public wishing to pull a consent agenda item? Mr. Gibbs? Okay, we'll go ahead and pull 8B, which is the check register. We'll go ahead and pull 9A, which is the HDL agreement. Okay, go ahead and, do I have a motion on the consent agenda, please?
On the consent agenda with the items to be heard immediately after, before the public hearings on the items.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a motion and a second on the floor. We're going to approve the consent agenda and here next item 8A and then 9B following. Do I have any discussion on the motion? 8B and 9A. Oh, 8B and 9A. Got it. Any further discussion? Okay, thank you very much. Take it to a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, passes 6-0. Was the motion by Emilio and second by Abdul. And we'll go ahead and take up 8A. I'm sorry, 8B, the check register, and I'll ask Mr. Gibbs to come forward. This is public comment on item 8B.
Thank you, Mayor Mike Gibbs. There was a editorial in the Pinecone last week by Paul Miller. And I don't know if you read it, it's about Doge or Muskonomics is what it was called. And I'd just like to read a portion of it because it's related to finance and writing checks. And he says that there are lots of productive jobs in the American economy, everything from sweeping streets to public works to nuclear physicists, et cetera. Many jobs are minimally productive or even have negative productivity, such as unnecessary bureaucratic administrative roles, compliance officers, and consultants who advise on political correctness and other such issues. For such people, the input, usually their salary and benefits, is greater than the output. In some cases, paying them may be politically expedient, but almost always a drain on the economy. Productive person is paid with money they help create, while an unproductive person is paid with money generated by somebody else. To maximize the prosperity in an economic system here in Pacific Grove, there should be as many of the as possible of the former productive people and few people as possible of the latter unproductive. Unfortunately, our government has grown into a morass of unproductive people, costing their productive brethren hundreds of dollars or millions of dollars. I'm not saying that's necessarily PG, but it's kind of happening across the country. So my comment related to this and the check register is that I've been reading the check register for 3 or 4 months. and I read it last year also. And so this time I called the city, talked to somebody in the city staff related to the writing of checks and paying of the bills. And my question was, I won't tell you which accounts I was looking at, but I was looking at 2 or 3 very specific accounts, and I asked 3 questions. First, did anybody match the services against the contract? And did anybody match the invoice against the services, right? On these very specific, and these were $4,000 or $5,000 a month on a repeating basis, charges to the city. And the answer that I got was, I can't tell you that. You'll have to file a public records request. And maybe that's true. So even though the charges are transparent, we don't know what they mean because we don't know if they're charged against the contract, if the contract is current, or if in fact the services have been provided, right? And so that's my question. So what do we do about this? And my suggestion is, and I made this to council 2 years ago, you have a small 3-person business advisory finance committee. Mayor Peak didn't choose to take that up. It was a private matter. And I suggested this council do the same thing. We have a number of people in the city who are extremely capable of doing this. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, unless there's any further comment on the dais regarding this item and any further, I'm sorry, is there anyone else wishing in the public wishing to either online or in person wishing to comment on the check register?
Nobody online, Mayor.
Sure. Councilmember Perry.
A quick comment, and this is for Matt or maybe the finance admin. Isn't like a 3-way match like part of the whole process? So when we pay somebody, we check what the invoice was for, what the service was rendered, and essentially do it. Can you please confirm that?
Yeah, basically what we do is pretty much for in fact, most invoices kind of involve purchase orders where we match them up against the contracts, and the departments that are responsible for the contracts, you know, when the invoices come in, they will verify that the services were performed, and that they match the contract, and then sign off for approval, and then they send it to us as well too. So that's a standard procedure that we have.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you for that comment. We'll go ahead and accept the check register for the month. Move on to item 9A.
Mayor, since that item was pulled from the consent agenda, I think you need to vote separately on that.
To receive it?
Yes.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to receive it, please.
I'll make a motion to receive the check registry.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Take a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously 6-0.
Mayor, I can address item 9A if you wish.
Sure.
Right. So this is a matter of the recommended action is a motion to authorize the city manager to enter into an agreement with HDL companies for cannabis business permitting and inspection services. There's also, as indicated in the staff report, that the financial impact on this is estimated to be about $24,000. And the last comment I'll make is that the agenda report also makes reference to the city using the standard consultant services agreement. Now, there have been some questions raised by the consultant with respect to the indemnification clause, and that's still under discussion. So my recommended action on this item would be as it is in the agenda, and that if there's going to be any modifications to the standard agreement with respect to indemnification or other non-substantive matters, that would be subject to approval by the city manager and city attorney. So that's what I had to say about the agenda item, and I can answer questions if there are any.
Okay, and take it out to the public, and I'll ask Mr. Gibbs to, if he would like to make comment on this item that he pulled.
Yeah, so thank you very much. The HDL or any contract, my point earlier, which is going to pertain to the HDL contract is that in asking in the past year for proof of matching, as Mr. Paduri had mentioned, we actually knew what the delivery of the services was in the cemetery, for example. And the invoices didn't match what we knew the services to be. So that's why I brought this up. we need to look at that. And if we let contractors with HDL, it's $2,000 a month. It doesn't seem a lot. But I have a couple of suggestions. First of all, the planning commission did yeoman's work on putting the procedures together for the cannabis. You have a number of people, including a member of the planning commission who worked on that, Steve Lilly, who I would say would, I haven't asked them, but they could be talked into perhaps performing some of this work rather than hiring HDL at $2,000 a month. Second thing is, I think later on the agenda, although I can't talk about it, there is a proposal to hire a business advisor. And part of that job is oversight of cannabis. Why don't we wait until you vote on that before you vote on a consultant for cannabis? Why we have two different people working on the same thing, right? My third comment is, being on the EDC, I have some experience with HDL. And I don't have, my opinion is their service was particularly poor. I don't like what they delivered and how they delivered it. And I'll give you a couple of examples. One example of HDL was that if you remember, HDL in the city under the previous city manager wanted to explore a sort of a maker space downtown. I don't know if you remember that. And HDL recruited a company from San Jose to come down, and the EDC had to approve this. I was on the EDC at the time, and in a conversation with HDL, one or two of us volunteered to go on the tour with Mr. Harvey and this consultant from San Jose. And the HDL person interjected himself and said, "You're not invited." I don't know why. So they came up with some crazy excuse for that. The second example, if you may remember, but HDL had a COVID recovery plan, which included a business card that local businesses could use called YIFTY. I don't know if anybody remembers the YIFTY program. I think Mr. Paduri probably does. And I objected to the YIFTY program because it included a fee that would go to HDL, right? So they're proposing the program and they would collect a fee, a clear conflict of interest. When I brought this up, it was dropped. So I just be careful working with HDL. They don't have a great reputation. I would encourage waiting until after you've decided what to do with a business advisor before you hire an.
Thank you.
I want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you. And we'll go ahead and ask if there's anyone else in the public, online or in chambers, that wishes to speak on the HDL item.
I do have a couple of online callers. Inga Lawrence and Dormer.
Thank you, Sandra. I have never, ever been a fan of HDL. They are the company that is
Language, if from the city attorney perspective, is that language that the city will have a say so on what kind of language needs to be constructed there or be modified?
They have requested a modification to the city's standard indemnification language. So that's a discussion that still needs to be had with them to finalize the language. So that was what I was referencing in my comments. So as I said, you have a choice, which is to allow the city manager, this contract is for less than the city manager's authority, which is, I think, less than $40,000. So this is a contract that would otherwise not even be presented to the council because the city manager has the authority to approve contracts less than $40,000. However, city manager's brought it to you for direction tonight. So since the city manager would have the authority to sign this contract without city council approval, I believe you've got the authority to delegate to the city manager and then also with my legal assistance, working out the final indemnification language. However, if you wish to have it come back, see the indemnification language that is being proposed, and do that. So those are your choices. File city manager and the city attorney to finalize the agreement with the indemnification language, or we bring it back to
I'm fine with you, both of you, like handling the things. It's you have the experience on both of these matters, so I wish you to go ahead. But I support the recommendation as is.
Can I get that to a motion?
So I move recommended action.
That's fine. The motion's on the floor. Do I have a second? I'll allow, after good discussion, we get the motion in a second, please. All right, thank you. Discussion on the motion.
I was wondering what the time frame is on this contract.
Sure. So at this point in the process, from stepping into this, the city's put together an ordinance. They've gone all the way through draft rules. But we had come to the council, I'm gonna say in the first meeting of September. And we talked to the council about before us doing that, if we're gonna bring a consultant to help us to vet applications, which is all this is for. So it's kind of one-time expenses. These aren't ongoing annual costs. That we should bring the consultant on to look at these rules because they've done this hundreds of times and they know where you're gonna be open to litigation, where you're not, how we want to nail this in. So the plan would be if the council were to okay this, we'd probably be back with the draft rules for the council to approve, I want to say about the second meeting in February. So, and then once those rules are approved by the council, then we would put together, okay, we're going to put out an application period of 60 days where people could submit applications and stuff. So does that answer your question?
Oh, there we go. On is off, right? What time frame is the contractor going to be delivering services, and at what point are they done?
I would, so it is going to be, I probably should back up. Maybe we should have explained this whole thing a little bit further. So the way this will operate once it's up and running, there's initial costs, and they're going to do that within 40 hours. That will include the total of helping us to establish fees, which these fees are all going to be charged to the people who submit for applications. But those fees will also cover HDL's cost to actually review applications. So that will be at no cost. What we're paying up front is the assistance with establishing the fees and with reviewing and approving our application process. So once this is in place, then there's going to be a teamwork thing. The city's the lead, but we'll take in applications. We'll transmit those to HDL for their initial review, and they'll tell us these guys meet every requirement, these guys don't. After they give us that tranche of applications, then what we'll be talking about is possibly a lottery will happen then at that point, and we'll take that. But I guess to answer your question about when's this end, once we get people actually up and running, they will be providing on-site regulatory inspections, again, making sure they meet all laws and codes. But once they're up and running and the business is open, they will, if we choose to continue to work with them, which would probably be the best option, they will come back annually and they will do re-inspections to make sure that they're still meeting all the rules, requirements and codes that work for the police department on that. We're also going to do audits every year of all of their revenues to make sure that we're getting the taxes that they should be paying us. So it's really is a niche that they developed for cities who they can't staff this themselves, but the revenue we're going to bring in. You know, this would be a person you probably pay, 150, 175,000 total benefits a year versus pass through is the way this is set up. It's just again the initial upfront costs that you'll have to.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, I appreciate you bringing this to us because as the city attorney mentioned, this is something you could have done under your own spending authority. But I think it's great that you brought this forward for the council to discuss it. Since the public did bring it up as well. And thank you for discussing with us as well. I think this is prudent to do here for the reason that we are obviously not experts in cannabis. And this it's an area with a lot of regulations. So I think it makes sense for the small cost of this to make sure we're doing everything within regulation and having somebody with the expertise on board to help us. So I would support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Thank you very much.
So could I ask a question?
Yes.
I wasn't quite clear on the motion. It is the motion to approve the recommended action and that the city manager and city attorney will address the indemnification issue and then non-substantive issues. Is that the motion?
That is the motion.
Okay, thank you.
Second. Thank you for that clarification. And I will just comment along the lines of Councilmember McDonald before we take the vote, that we do need to have this person in place. We don't know exactly what's going to happen going forward with other things. So we want to continue to make progress on this. So I'm very much supportive of moving forward with this item. I'll call for a voice vote on this. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, passes 6-0 unanimously. We'll go ahead and move on my agenda here. We're going to go ahead and pass 11A because it's not time yet for the public hearing on the districting, which is to commence at 7 p.m. And we'll go ahead and go to item 13A, City Council discussion and direction regarding the process to establish council goals. And I'll recognize City Manager Mogensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we've mentioned before, the city council has a policy that's 0026, which states that community goals shall be prepared within the first calendar quarter of the year following a new election of council members. So that would put us right square in next January to March. The idea would be to work on our goals and to have a document ready for the council to approve by March, because in March we start planning for a budget for the next year. And a lot of these things are things you're going to want to put into the budget that you come out with. So from the history that I dug up over the last couple of years and recommendations from some, it turns out that the city used Renee Public Management Group in 2022 to work on the list of goals and work plan items. And that spanned for 2 years, that last one. On the agenda tonight is an update on the one you're currently in the middle of, and that'll go for 2 more quarters. So we'll finish up that work plan June 30th of this year before we start the new one. So what we're looking to do is to start, afresh now with a new council and a new set of goals. Our goals are required to be SMART, so they're specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and they're time bound, again, according to that policy. So based on the feedback that I heard, I reached out to our PMG and asked them approximately what would the cost be to come back and to help us do this goal setting again. And without getting into too much, I guess, level of detail, and they told me that probably a conservative number would be $35,000. So I wanted to bring that before the council tonight for some direction, find out, did you like working with them? Do you want to work with them again? Do you want us to look at additional proposals? Do we want to look at other options in-house or different ways of going about it?
Thank you very much for the report. Go ahead and go out to the public for comment on this item in chambers first. Anyone wishing to discuss items, what is it, 13A? Seeing none, go online. Anyone wishing to comment on 13A?
Yes, one caller, Anthony Tercel. Anthony Tercel?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. A few years ago, the council set their goals by having a workshop with the public invited where there was discussion. So there was no management group, no consulting costs. And I thought that process was pretty nice since it involved citizens and allowed them to get some input into it. That was done down at the Silmar Conference Grounds. I don't quite remember how long ago that was, 4 or 5 years, 6 years ago. So just a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. No further hands, Mayor.
Thank you. Go ahead and close public comment on this item, 13A. Bring it back to the council for discussion. I will lead off on this one just to say that I think perhaps given our change in staff and change in council, that this could be something that the council, that the staff, our staff could perform, saving on consulting costs, but also staff having the most knowledge of what they can and cannot do with the budget and with their personnel. So I think that we have an opportunity here. Obviously, we would workshop something and we could brainstorm that as we're here tonight and later on. But I think my thought is that we could do this on our own. We have a good group here, and I think that we can focus on what it is the City of Pacific Grove can perform. So I'm just going to kick it off with that. Not to want to hear what everyone else thinks about it, but that's my initial comment, and I'll go ahead and recognize other council members at this time. Mayor Pro Tem Emilio.
Thank you. I agree with the mayor in regards to what he just mentioned, but I'm not, I was involved with the remote public management group, and it just, I think we could do better than that, than Renee. That's just what I've been experienced with. And then I'll have to ask Mr. Morganson, what was done in, I know you were from Marina. What did they have any, what they decide to do on goals or anything?
Yeah, so every year Marina did the same exercise, probably in April. Couple of years I could say the majority that I was there, they just did it themselves. They just kind of had a Saturday workshop with the council and handled that within house. We also one year brought in a facilitator during the COVID time, and that was a little more difficult because it was all through Zoom. So people were moving into rooms and stuff. I have worked in other cities where it was put on by a facilitator, but it was more of the one-day workshop. And it was probably something most have experienced to have been involved in boards and stuff where you start with your SWOT analysis, and then you kind of move into what are the goals you want to look at for, well, a lot of times you start with your vision and your mission. And then what are the goals you want to look at for next year? And then how you can implement those goals, and you come up with some metrics to make it actionable and accountable. And then you check in every 6 months or so.
Okay, thank you. I kind of, I like that in regard to what you just mentioned. Maybe going that route, using a facilitator for a day. That's just my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Walking Stick, did you want to speak?
I've got a lot on my mind with this one, actually. I remember being a little disappointed with the kind of a lack of vision the last time around, which led to a mission statement that was could kind of be boiled down to trying to be everything for everyone, which I think was a little too broad. The idea of a mission statement and a vision for that matter is to empower decision-making so that you can use your mission statement and analyze a potential way forward and decide whether that does or does not fall within the line of where you want to take your city or your organization. So when I walked into this conversation, that was a big one for me, is I want us to be on the same page with having a common vision that we're working towards, something that we can agree on as far as that goes. But have it be specific enough to actually use it as a tool to help make decisions, not just make everything okay. Everything's a good idea. The second thing that I was thinking about was actually brought up by a caller, and that is, how do we include the public in decision-making this time around? How do we solicit feedback? How do we solicit input from the public on priorities? Because they are the people we're serving. They are the people who are this town. We're entrusted with decision making. We're entrusted with representing them. But I would like very much to have their voices as a primary consideration when we go into our deliberations. So I guess I'm looking to the rest of the council for how to facilitate that. You know, as we bring someone in to facilitate our conversation, you know, I'd like to have the public in some way facilitate the vision itself.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Benoit.
Thank you. I think that's seems like I agree with Councilman Walking Stick's sentiments here. Seems like a slow mo retreat it is, and I think that I'm perfectly fine with that. What I got from this agenda item was 35,000 seemed to be a really high number to begin with. So when I walked in, I was going to kind of voice my opinion on bringing that down considerably. But if this RPMG and the RPMG consultant providing these services at that point in time had a lot of other considerations too. It was not just the council discussion. There was a city manager discussion that was attached to it. So there were a lot of like factors going into how they actually built the entire like process. And I'm thinking that's why there's a high number here. But my question to Mr. Mogensen is, for the city to facilitate this, is this something that the city can do moving forward? Is there any anticipated additional help that you will need to achieve this outcome?
Well, I think it depends. That's going to depend on the format and the kind of what we decide on. And Councilmember Walking Stick just brought up points that, you know, made me think, how do we harness some of that public input? And I don't know if we could do that through surveys or things like that, or just have beginning of the meeting is often just you have public comment because it's a meeting, you know, so you'll hear that way as well. But to boil all that down into one vision statement is a process that would take time. And so I guess I'm not answering your question, and I guess I'm just not sure really. And I'd have to think about that, if we need some help to do that. That's a bigger.
And I was going to suggest, like, at the end of the day, I think the last process was not really visible to the public. And this time around appears to be that we want to be more visible to the public. So the public has a say so, or at least some commentary or feedback to say, are we going in the right direction or not? So that workshop could be a public workshop and with just council participating and public members being the audience, so to speak, without any comments, so to speak. Is that something that's achievable?
Yeah, certainly is.
So Mayor, I could share with you from my experience with other cities. I've seen some cities use a facilitator and then some cities do it in-house. And in terms of getting public engagement, one of the techniques that I've seen is you go through the goal, you have a presentation by city manager or who's ever presenting it. There's a discussion as to the goal. Should you keep it? Should you revise it? Or has it been accomplished? And then you take it off the list. And then before you reach a final decision on that, you go to the public on a goal by goal basis so that they can give real time discussion rather than just have them during the general comment section in the beginning when you haven't even started your conversation about the goals. So by having frequent public comment during the process, I think that encourages public comment, and it also informs the council as to what the public's thoughts are on them before you give direction to the city manager as to how to proceed. And then the other thing I've seen is that subsequent to this workshop, there would then be a follow-up council meeting there would be an agenda report that the city manager would present, and it would basically be a recitation of what happened at the goal setting session, that this was the goal and this was the input and this was the result and this was the direction from the council. So you then have a playbook, if you will, on a going forward basis, and people aren't just relying on their memories of what happened, and it's not just the minutes. You've got a more complete description of what it was that occurred.
And at that time, perhaps can revisit that what's done in the workshop.
Absolutely.
And finalize.
And seek public comment at that point. There may be people that might not be able to attend the workshop because of their schedules. So by the follow-up agenda report and agenda item that I described to you, exactly, council can discuss, maybe you want to make a modification upon further reflection, you get public input again. So it's kind of becomes full circle, if you will. And I think based on the comment that Councilmember Walkingstick made and that I'm hearing from other council members, you get that public input, and that's important because you want to be able to reflect their comments in your goals.
That's great. I agree with that. I agree with all of this. I think I'd like to entertain a motion to move forward with this, the city attorney's proposed way forward, and let a staff work on how best to go about that, making sure that we have the public input at both meetings, and one being a workshop, one being a regularly scheduled meeting of the city council, in that order. And so I'd at this time entertain a motion to that effect, if anyone would like to make one.
Well, it sounds like you just made one. Maybe you could ask for a second. Maybe you could ask for a second.
I'll go second, what you just mentioned.
Okay, sorry about that.
At first, I'll
I'm
go.
I'm trying to get everyone involved, but yeah, no, and any further comments on this? Looks like we have a motion and a second on the floor now.
I have a quick comment.
Yes, Councilman.
So I just wanted to see from a city manager perspective, I just want to make sure that this is something that staff can provide, correct? Or do we need a facilitator even for this exercise?
I think we can do it, depending on the level that we're looking to go to in this effort. Let me put it that way. I think that facilitators are good if you're trying to balance a lot of different voices and you're trying to bring it into one and get people to agree on things. If we're going to approach this as more of a collaborative model this year, I think we could probably do it. I do think, though, we probably, as you're talking, I'm thinking we come back in January with some proposed formats for the council to think about, because I think you need to agree on the format, at least at the minimum, going into it. And exactly how far we're going to go. If you're happy with the vision and the mission, then we're just going to go with the goals. That's much easier. If we're starting over at the vision and mission, it's going to be much more complicated probably. So we'll have to think through how we do that. But I think it's achievable, but I don't want to overpromise either, because I have not facilitated one of these myself before.
Okay,
But I've seen it plenty of times.
So I don't want to put you in a bind, and right now it says the goal setting session will take place early February 2025. So it's not really that far away. My suggestion is whatever motion we have, we also include an option for the city manager to come back to us with a facilitator led option, so that we have that option when it comes to the table to decide what we want to do. Thanks.
My concern was, do we have the staffing needed, and do we have the expertise within that staffing needed to do this? And I think Councilmember Pedori made a great point that if you get down this road and decide that there is a need for a facilitator, then maybe that's what we come back and do.
Councilmember Rao could also offer, just for thought, that you could also just say that, because the 35 doesn't seem correct. We think we could most likely be able to do this easily under 10 to 15,000. So you could also just give us a cap and say, if you don't think we're able to do this in-house, let us go up to, say, 10 or 15,000 with a facilitator or something.
If I could make a suggestion, since the city manager's got spending authority up to 40,000, I think that he would probably be in the best position to know if he's going to need assistance or not. So based on the motion that I've heard that the mayor made, if you went with that motion now, and then the city manager, if he determines as he gets deeper into this process that he needs assistance from a third party or a consultant, then he just said he thought it could do it for 15,000 or less. So certainly that's less than 40, and that would allow for him to reach out if he needed to. But if he felt that he didn't need somebody, he wouldn't need to hire him.
Councilman Rao, you completed your comments?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you.
Did you?
And And I wanted to thank the city manager again for bringing something to us that's under the spending authority, but is really important for the process of how we select our goals. I think it's brought together a really good discussion about what process we made. And I think we're really all on the same page. We want the public input. That's really important. So it's really good. And thank you, city attorney, for giving us the option to have the public input, because that's always sort of the impediment with the Brown Act. We get this one comment and then it's not interactive. So thank you so much for sharing that we have the option to do that for each individual goal, because I think that will make a big difference for the public input and for actually making this a goal-making process that represents the city and the city's needs that then lead the budget. So I would agree with the recommendation that if we feel the facilitator is needed, to go ahead and bring that into your spending authority, but to put together, I really like the idea of bringing something back maybe in January, talking about how we could potentially facilitate that for us to look at. So thank you very much. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you, Councilmember Walkingston.
First of all, I got to say this is, I'm much more excited about this plan than what we walked in here with. And I'm really looking forward to this. I came here wanting to work with you, not necessarily an external agency. And I'm much more excited now about getting to involve the public in all of this. And I'm very comfortable with the ceiling of $15,000 on a potential facilitator as well, if we need to go down that direction.
Thank you so much, Councilman Walkingston. I'm going to just throw out there, January is going to be busy. January is one meeting, and I'm just going to throw this out there because I'm already thinking about it. It's going to be the vacancy process. It's going to take probably a few hours, a couple hours, I would say. So I would give the leeway tonight, if everyone's comfortable, up till February, the first meeting in February, for you to roll out something. I don't think that's going to kill us or anything. We're still in the goal period until July, right?
It will be fine on that. We will be looking at maps that night, but we'll be fine.
I think we got it. I don't know where else we could put it, but we just can't do it January. I don't think, especially with the holidays and everything. I don't want to put you guys under too much stress.
I know we had,
Mayor Pro Tem Emilio?
yeah, I know we had a first and a second, but could I ask, Mr. Morganson, do you have enough direction on, what
I do.
we kind of
Yeah, I
thought
do.
about?
We're not happy with what the initial proposal here, and I have enough direction to, I know what we'll come back with.
Okay, well, if there's no further discussion, we'll go ahead and take a voice vote on this. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, passes unanimously. Thank you very much for the great discussion. And it's 7:05, so it is time to go on to the, just about right on time for the district, but I'm going to need a 5-minute break. So I'm going to call a break right now. We'll come back at 7:10 if we can. Thank you very much.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Here, okay, yes, we're back. Okay. Back from the break, 7:10 PM. We're going back to 11A on the public hearing relating to the district boundaries as stated in 11A. And I will recognize City Manager Mogensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the second of our 4 public hearings on the districting process. On November 20th, the council saw a presentation regarding the first 2 hearings of the mapping. So exactly as we said before, the first 2 are exactly the same. So tonight's hearing is going to basically recap what you saw last time. So we'll try and move a little bit quicker through it so that plenty of time for the public to ask questions and to give us more comments on what they think should make up our districts when we start making these districts. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Jeff Tilton to walk through his presentation.
Thanks, and good evening again, everyone. As City Manager Wilkinson mentioned, this is the second of 4 public hearings, and the second of the first what we call pre-draft hearing, draft map hearing, public hearings. We're going to hold a public workshop on January 8th in council chambers. Very similar presentation that you're receiving tonight, but also there'll be a little more focus on the mapping tools. So if folks want to submit draft maps either on paper or through a website, we can coach them on how to do that. And I'll show you those particular tools here in a few minutes. So then the February 5th and March 5th hearings are what we call draft map hearings. And so there are deadlines. So folks want to submit maps, even though we have to post 7 days prior to February 5th, I will need a little more time in preparing those. So we have a deadline of January 24th for the February 5th hearing and February 24th for the March 5th hearing. The adoption will be, at this point, March 19th. So in order to go through this process, we must follow rules. And number one, we must follow the federal laws. And what we're trying to do in the city of Pacific Grove is to create 6 districts of equal population. Not easy to do. We likely will not have 6 districts of precisely equal population. The courts have allowed up to a 10% deviation across the 6 districts in this particular case. We must follow the Federal Voting Rights Act and have no racial gerrymandering. And then we shift into California. Its criteria, and these are mandatory and in order, that the districts must be geographically contiguous. We want to avoid the division of neighborhoods and communities of interest. We want to have easily identifiable boundaries, and we want our districts to be compact. And one of the things that we must note is that we shall not adopt election district boundaries for the purpose of favoring or discriminating against an incumbent political candidate or political party. So in order for us to create these six districts, we need data, and the data that we must use comes from the 2020 census. Even though we're about 5 years away from the 2030 census, these are the data that we must use. And each of the districts must contain about 2,521 people. And you can see the breakdown from the 2020 census, where the total population is 15,125 right up here. And then you'll see the breakdown of the total population. 14% were Hispanic Latino. But what we're also looking at here is the citizen voting age population. So when I come back to you with draft maps, you'll have a table behind every single draft map, and it'll be basically broken down like you're seeing here. So the citizen voting age population, they may not be registered to vote, but they are eligible to vote. So essentially, you're looking at citizens who are 18 and over. And this is what the breakdown is, or was rather, from the 2020 census in percentage points. So when we're looking at where might there be a concentration of the Latino citizen voting age population, and we found that there really is no large geographic concentration. The same would apply for Asian American citizen voting age population across the city, and the same would apply for African American citizen voting age population across the city. So part of this public hearing is to solicit input from the community on how would you describe or name the area where you live? What are its geographic boundaries, and what other neighborhoods are there? And some of the things that we could use are parks, roads. We've used school attendance zones, etc., or other public landmarks. And I'll show you everybody who's here. If they're afraid to speak up tonight, you could surely send it by email. We have an email address that totally dedicated for this project. Some of the possible neighborhoods, we took this from the city's website, and it already has some neighborhoods listed. We'll definitely try to respect the neighborhoods that are listed here. There might be other rationale for us to look at different neighborhoods. And with respect to define, what is a community of interest? Well, it's a population that shares common social or economic interests that should be included within a single district for the purposes of its effective and fair representation. So they might have shared socioeconomic characteristics, shared histories, etc. Some of the socioeconomic demographics that we have found based on, again, on the 2020 census, we show concentrations of college graduates, household incomes over $75,000 a year, and perhaps concentrations of renters. So then we're going to shift into our tools, and this is what we call we call it a paper map tool. These are available on the website right now, and folks can just basically print these out. I believe there's probably some also available at City Hall. I could be wrong, but knowing your city manager, I'm sure there are some that are there. And essentially just color in the 6 districts that you believe how the by district election should move. It's simple, the numbers are there. You need to add them up to the desired district population. You might have to cut some in half because you might go too high in your estimation. The online drawing tool is, I really love it because it's really simple. And I say that relatively speaking. And this is where one can simply just color in 6 districts. We can drill down, even though this particular example says by voting precinct, and that's what those numbers represent. Once you drill down, it'll break down into census blocks. And that's what we use to really create the districts. We use census blocks. And so this would be a big part of the workshop on January 8th, is really learning how to use this particular tool. Once you get it, you'll find that it's amazing, amazingly fun too. So now it's your turn. What do you consider your neighborhood? What are your communities of interest? And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to the mayor. And here's the contact information. Thank you very much, Mayor and council members.
Thank you so much, Jeff. That was a great presentation. Now we'll just take it out to the public in the chambers first. Anyone wishing to comment, provide input on this, knowing that we're going to have the maps. I think it'll be more fun with the maps, but we are soliciting input at this time. Mr. Gibbs, come on.
Thank you. I was here at the last public comment session. I just have one comment. At the last session, the demographic data showed a mathematical error on the population. Calculations didn't add up to be 100%. I think the consultant acknowledged that and he was going to fix it. I couldn't read what it said, so I don't know if he fixed it or not. Maybe he can comment about that. Thank you.
Anyone else in chambers wishing to comment? Anyone online wishing to comment on this item, the district item?
Yes, I have 2 hands.
Okay, Ms. Haynes.
Well, and one, Jane Haynes.
Yeah, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. This morning, I emailed you comments suggesting that Pacific Grove use our transition from at-large elections to district elections as an opportunity to further our land use policy to preserve Pacific Grove's traditional hometown qualities. What I envision is Pacific Grove divided into 6 districts with approximately the same number of residents per district, which would be 2,521 according to Dr. Tilton. So that would be, I made a typo in my comments today. I put 245 and meant 2,450. But anyway, for example, I live in the retreat area. So maybe my district could be, the retreat area could be District 3. And we could have a representative that lives in our district, knows our district, and would know our concerns, like the garbage trucks that damage our sidewalks, or we have a mailbox with obscenities written on it, or have elderly residents who need help sprucing up their yards. So instead of calling a council member who lives across town, doesn't know the retreat area, I could call the District 3 council member who knows that mailbox and about the elderly residents, and he or she could have appointed a District 3 executive committee to look into it. I realize this isn't talking about what Dr. Tilton is talking about, where the boundaries should be, but in a sense it is. And it's an opportunity for us to further something that's the #1 land use goal in our general plan. And that is to preserve Pacific Grove's traditional hometown qualities. So we could attempt to do that. There could be a bulletin boards in the city hall for each district, 6 districts. We can each post what we're doing, and it would heighten our hometown qualities of connection with one another, our neighborhood's uniqueness and their history, our sense of pride and our inclusiveness, where everyone in the retreat area, District 3, would participate in our districts unity. And of course, everyone in other districts would participate in theirs. So,
Thank you, Ms. Haynes. Anyone
so I
else?
hope we'll consider that in connection with this exercise.
Thank you. Thanks for the input. Anyone else?
No further hands, Mayor.
Okay, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the council for discussion, close public comment on this item. I will ask Mr. Tilton if we were able to address that error that was raised previously relating to the demographic data.
Yeah, so, well, the folks at National Demographics Corporation are just almost finished with the red face of embarrassment. We were able to make that correction and it was purely an oversight. So it's listed up here. You will see it does not exceed 100%.
Okay, great. I'm glad to hear
Mr.
that.
Gibbs, thanks for keeping us on top of things, by the way.
All right, thank you very much. So I'll bring it back to the council for discussion. Councilman McDonough?
You. I do have one question. I appreciate Dr. Tilton, you mentioning that we can divide up the census blocks as they're listed, because I noticed in a couple of them, they're about 1,500 each, which would put us over maybe for that area. So my question is, I could see how maybe you could do that on the paper map. I'm assuming there'll be a tool for that in the online maps as well?
Actually, I want to, it's not splitting up census blocks. It's splitting up this the census tracts. Okay, so that's what that's what those represent, those big numbers. And then when we get on the web-based tool, you can drill down and it'll start opening up the census blocks, and it will tell you how many people live in that particular census block or census blocks. Yeah.
Okay,
There's not enough room on the paper map to do that, by census block.
Okay, great. So we can drill down from the tracks and see the blocks, and that will help us divide those up.
Right.
Thank you, Councilman Walkingstick.
Yeah, actually to address the caller Jane Haynes concern, and I'm sure this will come up with many other people, which is why I'm addressing it. Under the second California criteria, we have avoiding dividing neighborhoods by communities of interest, which is speaking to Ms. Haynes' point on the flip side of avoiding dividing areas of interest is maintaining communities of common interest. So as that's a California consideration, I also want to reassure our community that I think that's a common consideration of all of ours and something that the state is going to help us work towards.
Thank you very much. Councilman Perry.
Yes, thank you. I believe the percentage figures are still wrong. So if you just pull up slide number 7, I'm looking at voter registration. It's well over 100%. So maybe you can take another look and just rectify that. So November 2022 voter registration, if I add that up, it's 107%, which is super off. So, so perhaps you can correct those. But my question perhaps to you or maybe to the city attorney, knowing that making things equitable is really one of the big goals behind this exercise. We have several boards and commissions that apply for city appointments. Does this translate to the boards and commission appointees to be part of the appropriate districts?
I don't believe so, but we could check back with you. My understanding is that the districts are drawn for the boundaries for the election of the city council members only, and that the members of the boards, committees, and commissions are appointed by the mayor with concurrence of council. And it doesn't mean that the individuals would necessarily need to come from different districts.
Okay, all right, thank you. But if you could just, is that confirmed, or are you going to confirm that?
Well, I'm fairly sure, but I will. I understand your need for certainty, and I'll make a note and get back to you.
Yeah, so because of one of the things that's running through my mind is like the application process, should the BCC application process have which district are you coming from? So is that like a criteria that we need to identify right off or not? But anyway, if you can come back to us with that. But I think the bigger point I have is this is again, I want to repeat myself. I think I did this earlier too, is this is a really expedited timeline for us to be doing districting, 6-month process. And we're already, it seems like midway here or getting to midway stage. And I want the city manager to just do whatever you can to do the outreach process to ensure that we're capturing as much feedback as we can. Whatever is happening next year, if we can, whatever channels of communication that we have, if we can expand those and make sure that all stakeholder input or feedback is received. Thank you.
If I could comment on that, the elections codes section that we're governed by here is section 10010, and that contemplates the meetings that are necessary. We've already had our first meeting on November 20th. This is the second meeting. There's been an extra meeting that's been added beyond what is required by the elections code, and that's the one that the city manager made reference to, which is the workshop meeting on January 8th. So I think that that's one example of the city making an extra effort to get public involvement in this. And I believe there's something on the website to Mr. Mogensen.
Yeah, we do have a dedicated web page, and I try to put it in our newsletter every week. But I hear you, and we'll continue to look for more avenues to push it out. And I'm wondering during our comments and everything, if we could ask Jeff or Dr. Tilton, is it possible to pull up our map? So, because I believe you might be able to see on people's submitted maps so far too, just to kind of get a check in on how we're doing so far with interests. Is that possible?
I don't have any maps submitted to me as of this point.
Okay. So
Did the city receive some draft maps?
No. So my question just is, could we just show people the mapping software like in a once?
Oh, yes. Oh, okay. My apologies.
Might be a way to encourage people to see how easy it is to use. Also on with your why you
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. And my intention was not if the city is conducting more meetings or not, but this is, in my view, a really important aspect for the city that has not happened in like centuries. And so we need to make sure that like everybody's aware that this is happening. And so if there's any social media presence, et cetera, let's just do the necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Rao.
Mr. Mogensen just addressed my question, so we can go ahead and let Dr. Tilton give us a demo.
Okay, very good. Oh, Mayor Pro Tem Emilio.
Thank you. I just, Mr. Mogensen, if it turns out, I mean, we've had 2 public hearings, we've had just a couple of comments on the district mapping. What if one person's, maybe Mr. Tilton might be, maybe 1 or 2 people put some maps together? What's the process if that happens? I hope it doesn't, but
yeah. So we will demonstrate any maps that are submitted by the public. However, it's probably customary as well that usually demographer will give you a couple options of maps that meet the code requirements.
Okay.
And while he's doing that, I'll take one more quick minute to just say that the way you get to the map today is you go to the city's website. On the front page, there's a button in the carousel that says districting. You can click on that and it'll take you directly to the city and the city clerk's pages. We have a page that's set up for districting. If you scroll down that page, probably about halfway, you'll see Dave's Maps. And that's the link you want to use to get to the software.
Great. Dr. Tilton, why don't you?
Yeah, so I went behind the curtain because there's a tutorial piece that's involved in this, and that's also listed on the Civic Grove website if they want to use this online tool. It's a great tool, and it tells you what to do. But here's the Pacific Grove template. Takes a little bit of time to load. I won't go and belabor this a whole lot. By the way, you'll receive every map that's been submitted. I believe I said this last time, but I think there are some new folks that did not hear that. there will be maps. You'll receive every map that's been submitted, whether it's viable or not. We show that out of to celebrate the spirit of those who submitted a map. They took the time, etc., whether it's viable or not. And then maybe council sees a map that is not viable, but asks for a tweak, and we can tweak it, and maybe it becomes viable, as you know, for council to consider. In addition, our firm usually does 2 to 3 draft maps for you to consider as well. It could even be more if council provides that direction. But here's the tool. You can see that it's already been started a little bit. The colors indicate, like blue would show you that this is whoever started this is District 1. And then this green area over here would be District 2. And over here you see that, well, District 1 is shy 160 people to reach that magic 0 number, the equal population across all 6 districts. And you can see that District 2 needs a lot more as well. So this is just a start. But what I was talking about, these big numbers here, those are precinct numbers. So we want to click into on this thing called block. And again, I'm going to show this to folks who are going to participate. And then you just get the paintbrush tool. And I like to drill down using the plus. And as soon as I click on it, it should, there you can see the census blocks now are starting to emerge. And so you just color in and then go to the next one you want to go into. You know, oh, I want this to be District 2 up here or something like that. So this is not how it would look, because in this particular case, Districts 1 and 2 are not contiguous, as we see in the blue and the green colors. But this just shows you how simple it is. The instruction will say to, you know, save it, give it a unique name, and send it to that email address. And it should come right to me. And then I formalize it in our system, and I will have the correct figures and not go beyond 100% on these darn things. Second time that's happened, they both happened with Pacific Grove. I can't believe it in the 300 or 400 meetings I've been doing here. So anyway, that's how simple it is. I say that, and I apologize if I'm offending anybody, because I don't even know how to use TikTok. So and so someone could make fun of me in that respect. But yeah, this is what we'll spend time on January 8th. It'll be a big part of it.
Dr. Totten, any further council comments before we consider this discussion or this hearing completed? Yes, Councilman McDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. Since we're on the topic, we keep mentioning the meeting on January 8th. Can we give just a little bit more detail? I know there was some stuff in the agenda item, but it might be helpful just to say for the record a little bit more of what will happen in that meeting so people know what to expect. My understanding was they can maybe even bring their own laptops with them and be working on their own systems. Is that right?
That's correct. So I believe Dr. Tilton will walk us through some of the basics, probably abbreviated version of the what you saw tonight, and then he'll pull up the mapping software and give a more in-depth tutorial on how to use it. And then people will be able to, at their table, if they bring their laptop or probably tablet, they can hook into our Wi-Fi and they can work on maps right there and get somebody to come up and help them if they have questions or things like that.
Okay, great. I just thought that might help get more of the outreach out there, understanding how easy it was and that you can actually come to that meeting and get help with actually drawing your map in real time. Thank you.
I think that's a great suggestion, Councilman McDonald, because if you really want to make a map, I would definitely make time on your calendar for that meeting so you can come and see how the software works. Because we all know how software can be. At this time, I don't think we need a motion, Mr. City Attorney. We've held the hearing. I think we've completed the item, so we'll go ahead and move on to the next item, which I believe is 13B. Just get over to that. This is item 13B, and this is the Economic Development Commission Efficiency and Effectiveness Review. And I am going to turn it over to my colleague, Councilmember Baduri.
Thank you. I had sent in a deck. Is it possible to pull it up? Okay, great. All right. Thank you for hearing me today. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this item is being brought forward as just we're in a unique point in time where we have an EDC board in place with 7 members, and out of the 7 members, we have six that are going to be essentially be appointed, and the 1 member that's on the EDC board is actually has just been appointed 2 months ago. So we're in a unique spot here where we can assess how effective has the EDC been over a course of time, and what kind of steps can we take to essentially make the city, the residents, and the businesses better. So with that, there's a background slide here. The EDC itself, the formation, what is it governed by? So it's the PG Municipal Code Chapter 3.40. And then it's an advisory board, like many of our boards and commissions. The EDC board provides recommendations to council, and the intent is really to address I would say the local resident and business needs, to coordinate efforts between some of our partners like the chamber, the BID, HID, and so on, effectively the board meets I would say monthly, and discusses what the agenda topics are and provides recommendations as the case may. So it's nothing different from any other board. The difference with the EDD though is that, the EDC is that it does have a budget. There's an economic development division budget that the city has in place. And as part of that EDD budget, there is some allocation that is provided to the EDC, which is at the last council meeting, it was $50,000. So essentially the EDC meets and as part of its, I would say overall objectives is to see how to disperse that 50,000 to whatever the EDC commission feels that it needs to disperse it to. So that's how it's been working. And I would like to mention that as part of that EDD budget, there is also over the course of time, we have allocated staff specifically for EDC items, and that was a quarter of a quarter like staff time, which roughly amounts to $25,000. That particular staff time over the course of time too has kind of dwindled as to how much that staff is actually supporting the EDC. There are some consultant services like HDL that come into play, which are in the range of $40,000, which is for providing consulting services for any EDC matters. And then there's a facade improvement program, which is $25,000. That is also part of the EDD budget. Can we go to the next slide, please? Like I said, unique spot in time this December. And so what I have been part of the EDC as a liaison for, I would say, the past 2 years. And really, these are some of my general observations of how the EDC is functioning. I can tell you there has been obviously agenda items come in and go, but also EDC members have come in and gone. Some EDC members have resigned. And the specific citation from the resignation is because things are not moving along. And so if I were to these are just some of them, the city manager can certainly elaborate, but what I find is that we're not effectively serving the business interests of the community effectively. And so that involves anything from somebody who a new business owner wanting to need assistance from the city to as much as whatever the EDC recommends. Where are all those recommendations going? And is the city actually looking into those recommendations to take subsequent steps? So there are a few things listed here, but what it comes down to is really there are no resources that are available from a city perspective to address many of these matters, many if not all of these matters, and that resource is essentially like a person that needs to handhold most of these queries or partnerships or maintaining relationships, as the case may be, that is missing completely from a city standpoint. So that's the present status. And so if we can go to the next slide, please. The recommendation that I'm bringing here today is this is not new. EDC has been around for a few years, and I've personally seen it for the past 2 years. And my recommendation is that to make this more, I would say, more efficient in more ways than one, to serve the business what it really needs, I recommend that we actually sunset the EDC, and thereby the funds that are allocated specifically for the EDC will move to the overall EDD budget for us to reallocate as the case may be. And then as part of the sunsetting process, we will, whatever recommendations or projects that are ongoing, we'll be able to take it on through what I've outlined next. As well as we're in this, again, like I said, like a unique spot where we're receiving applications for EDC. We have one commissioner that's on EDC. So there are some steps that are listed here would say what we need to do as part of the sunsetting process. But the main goal of this recommendation is to really create what is missing completely. And that is to create a full-time dedicated city resource. I have named it as business liaison, but that title can be worked upon. And that is solely for economic development. And so this resource will function as a think of it as a program manager function, where they will coordinate and provide all services that are required to the business community. They will be part of the city manager's office, and will be reporting to the city manager directly. And I've listed some funding here as to how we can address some of the funding to create this full-time dedicated resource. And I did want to call out that the facade improvement program will continue to remain as is, that is being left untouched. And so just the next 2 slides just capture what we want to achieve from this resource. So if you can just go to the next slide. So previously I listed some areas of concern where we're saying, okay, so the business owners are lacking any assistance. So this individual will actually be a direct support. The intent would be somebody that everybody in the city gets to know on a first name basis, and essentially will take in any feedback that is there to make improvements. Similarly, the intent is for this resource to examine what is happening today with our business licensing process. So earlier on, we heard about some budget-related item and business fees. Well, this resource is a perfect example for how somebody like this can assess what fees are going on with the city and make recommendations. So some cities, some fees may be needed, some may not be needed, some may need to be increased, and so all of these will come under the purview of this business liaison. The other thing is partnership building. For any city to be effective and support its constituents, we need to be better partners. So we have several partners in play. We have the BID, we have the HID, we have the Chamber of Commerce, we have C Monterey. Well, who is actually maintaining all these relationships today? Who's actually nurturing these relationships today? How are we taking them to the next possible step? And so this resource, part of the whole activity that this resource will do is really complete dedication towards all of these areas. Similarly, program management will be the essence of this function. So we expect somebody to be really capable of performing program management, and that extends to event management too, because events are key of what the city does today. And then just all the EDC recommendations, if any, they need to be addressed. And certainly one of the ways that I was thinking of is that this resource will look into developing an overall economic development strategy for all the city, for the entire city, or just as we heard in the item before, for all the districts. So this economic development kind of resource will look into what will be the strategy from an overall city standpoint to address economic development overall. And so any kind of recommendations that have been brought forward today, or any recommendations that can be brought forward in the future, will be part of this resources function. And then seems like I missed some words here, but at the end of the day, I mean, we like I said, there's a $50,000 EDC allocation How are we actually equitably serving the community that with that 50,000 today? So this is the last time it was provided to two particular businesses. And I'm not saying the businesses did not deserve it, but all that I'm saying is from if we have a certain pot of money, we need to make sure that economic development benefits all the small businesses and everybody that we're serving towards. So that's where the business liaison will come in. And then there are some other items too that if you can go to the next slide too, just from a overall future perspective. So we talked about cannabis earlier in HDL. So HDL will come in and HDL will provide its services. And there are many services in there, but who is actually going to be in charge of actually making sure HDL is doing the work that they're supposed to do? And so this particular individual will have direct oversight and management to essentially again nurture or like look into that relationship and make recommendations in the future if HDL is not the right company to go after. Similarly, the feedback and input process today, the feedback and input process, from what I understand, is coming through the EDC board, and the EDC board is making those feedback loops through several business queries or etc. But tomorrow we could have this individual directly reach out to businesses, collect feedback in several other reports or maybe new channels that we have not even explored. It could be social media or otherwise, and essentially garner input from the business community, from the residents, to see how to create that overall strategy. And speaking of strategy, we already have a LEAP kind of report that was shared with the council earlier. The intent of economic development is really to attract businesses to town and also to retain the businesses in town. So this strategy will be the number one item. And so we already have a lot of reports. We've done a lot of plethora of, like, I would say, plans, reviews, etc. So the intent is to take any existing reports, collect any new feedback that is there, and develop an overall strategy that we can work towards, which will make this equitable for everybody. And then finally, as a comment, I wanted to mention that what we are lacking at a council level is what is happening with economic development, generally speaking, with the city. I know we get bits and pieces of information here and there, and I get some information from Matt. I get some information from the EDC, so on and so forth. But really, there's no formal structure to say what is exactly happening and are we marching towards the right direction or not. So this gives a great avenue for the business liaison function to provide additional items as the case may be that the council reserves. So anyway, so the recommendation is to sunset the EDC and to take next steps to create a new resource. But I'm open to any other comments that are there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent report. Mr. Morgan, did you want to reserve comment would you like to comment on anything that he mentioned? I know you guys collaborated.
I don't have any further comments right now. Yeah, but
Okay.
for questions or anything else you need from me.
Okay, I'll go ahead and take it out to the public here in chambers to comment on this item. I don't think so. There you go.
Oh,
No, you're good.
okay. Anyway, so I'm glad you all have the LEAP report. I think it's a critical piece of information. And before I continue on, I would highly suggest that you invite this group back, do an evaluation of that 2016 report, see what was accomplished, what wasn't, why, and have them help you gauge your way through what you're recommending. I don't know if you know, but this was attempted in 2014 and it failed. It was attempted again in 2016 and it failed. What I just heard described, in my opinion, is a full-time benefited employee. I don't think you're going to get anybody part-time to do everything that has been identified in the presentation. And that was part of the failure in the past, is because the city wasn't willing to invest 100% of itself by employing a full-time person so they could truly concentrate on the responsibilities they were given. I think this is the beginning of the dismantling of all of the city's boards, commissions, and committees. I think the Economic Development Commission is a scapegoat. As I said, I think this is the beginning of everyone else going their separate ways, whatever it may be. I think a lot of the issues identified in the presentation, those responsibilities belong to the Chamber of Commerce, the HID, the BID, C Monterey, and whatever else or whatever other organization this city belongs to. When you talk about leadership, their boards need to get together, figure out why they're weak. And it's their responsibility to take on that identification. I don't believe 100% it's the city's responsibility or place to get involved in what the chamber should be doing. Anyway, this is very disappointing, quite frankly. And I get the idea of what you're talking about, council member, of having a dedicated person. But I think what you'll find in these other reports is that the recommendation is that this individual would work closely with the Economic Development Commission, not to have it disband. Anyway, again, I just encourage you to invite this Academy of Economic Development group back, because I think they would be very helpful to you before you proceed. And my final question is, what's the hurry? So thank you.
Anyone else wishing to comment after Mr. Gibbs, please queue up.
I'm the only member of the Economic Development Commission going to talk tonight. I'm a current member, been on here for 2 years. And I don't get ticked off too often. I'm ticked off. Maybe at Councilman Pedori, maybe that's not fair, but we had a EDC meeting scheduled for this past Monday. I didn't know it was canceled until I saw the agenda, which had a big cancellation on it. Nobody contacted us. Nobody told us not to show up for the meeting. I heard that there was nothing on the agenda. We had submitted things for the agenda. They just weren't put on there. I'm ticked off. The first time, and I called every member of the EDC that any one of us knew that this was in the works, was when the council agenda was published. First time anybody knew. Nobody had the courtesy, the thoughtfulness, the kindness to call people who had been on this thing for 2 years and say, hey, by the way, you're all fired. Why is that? Now, I have to conclude that this is one of the problems, because 6 of the 7 members have a business or work in a business. Is this how you're going to treat the people in the business community? I read the LEAP report. I read it 2 years ago. If you read the report, it says that the attitude of the city toward business makes it unfavorable for additional investment. That hasn't changed. So this is the council's problem, not the EDC. EDC was effective. We recommended 25 different actions. I got different excuses why it wasn't going to happen. Money, staff time, whatever. I don't believe in Mr. Peduri saying that any of those projects are going to be continued. I don't believe that. You have to show me. So this is not the way to treat people who volunteered hundreds of hours, and to say to us that one of the reasons for canceling it was 12 hours of staff time a month. That was one of the reasons given, 12 hours of staff time a month. Members of this commission, I added it up, 400 or 500 hours of these people volunteered their time, took it away from their own business. And you had the temerity to say 12 hours of staff time wasn't worth those 400 or 500 hours that the EDC had put into working on projects. I'm offended. I don't talk, you know me, I've been up here hundreds of times. I don't talk like this. You should put this off, get input from the business community. I'm going to run out of time. So I just want you to urge you, put this off until next year so you can go out to the business community and see. Duties are up there. Ask the business community what they think, and that hasn't been done. Do it, please. Thank you.
Okay, we'll check online, see if anyone would like to comment online on this.
Thank you. iPhone 2. You have the floor.
Hi, it's Debbie Beck. Good evening, everyone. As a former EDC chairperson, I am very disappointed to see this on the agenda item. And I'd like to say to Councilmember Perduri, I wish as a liaison that you had mentioned this to the EDC over the last couple of years of being the liaison. I was part of the LEAP report many years ago, and I can attest to the fact that many of those items never became effective. And it was really due to the leadership of our city. It had nothing to do with EDC. And I think what's extremely important to understand is everyone that sits on EDC as a volunteer is either a business owner or connected to the city somehow. They have vital information that they can provide back to the city staff. We did have a liaison, or not a liaison, but a city staff member up until probably a year ago, which was not very effective in my opinion. But I think to do this at this time is very concerning to me because again, these are business owners that would be applying for these positions and their voice should be heard. There's a lot of things that can happen within EDC, within our community, but I think we need to really tap into the Chamber of Commerce. You know, we had a former president or CEO, I guess you could say, who was very effective in bringing business to Pacific Grove. And we need to tap into that opportunity with the chamber and understand, I think all the council members need to understand that the Chamber of Commerce actually sits in one of our city-owned buildings and does not pay rent. So they could certainly be an asset for us. But again, I think going forward is that we need to continue with this committee. And I don't take these things lightly, but in this particular case, having sat on it for 2 years, I did see the importance of it. I have watched several of the current EDC meetings. And again, I would like to see it continue on. And I hope that as the council sitting there, you understand that and give this some more thought. And again, having even an employee, you know, half time doing this job with HDL, I think, you know, they can certainly bring this forward, work with the EDC, work with the business owners, but let's give it some more thought and let's not disband this group. Thank you for your time.
Robin Benedy.
Hello, I sit on the EDC. I have for the last 2 years. And I have been frustrated because there is lack of staff support. I was the liaison, the chief liaison for the concert series, and I had great support. I learned through the grapevine that it was felt that it was too much staff support. All that said, when Laurel left, we had nobody. So that was problematic. We couldn't really do anything. Things were stalled. And so that's a problem. I am a little disappointed in our council liaison, whom I spoke with last week, who never mentioned that this was even on the agenda. I just feel like the council hasn't been great at communicating to its committee members, commission members. I don't know if I'm unique, but I learned about the city manager being fired through the pine cone. Nobody sent me any communication about that, which still irritates me. And this too, I didn't know about this until somebody called me and said, this is on the agenda. So I just wish that the city was more supportive of business. I just don't get it. I mean, I see that a staff person devoted to this project, this program would be helpful. But I also think that community input is important. And so I would suggest that you give us staff support of 1 day a week, like we had with Laurel. And we can get things done, but as it is, we're not able to get anything done. We're really frustrated. I don't know what else to say. I mean, it's frustrating for me as an EDC member, and I'm also irritated and offended that I was not informed that this was even on the agenda. So, Chops, I'm disappointed in you as our liaison. I hope that you will reconsider. Thank you.
Christy Metzner.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and thank you. And I'm sorry to hear about the EDC not being notified of the cancellation of the meeting. I'm Christine Metzner, President and CEO of the Chamber. And I just want to let you know the Chamber has been a supporter of EDC. We continually work with property owners all the time. I'm meeting with them, trying to fill vacancies. I know we do have a few right now. But as you consider the possibility of hiring an employee for the city to focus on the economic development for the city, I encourage you to ensure that this position is more than just administrative. This individual must also have the clear directive to attract new businesses to Pacific Grove, along with streamlining the business license process, which is a big problem. Fill our vacant buildings and also contribute to the economic vitality of our city. This role should be focused on measurable results, setting clear deliverable goals that can be tracked over time. It is also important that this employee works collaboratively with the Chamber, the BID, the HID, and all of our local businesses. Together, we can leverage our combined resources and expertise to create meaningful opportunities for economic growth for Pacific Grove. Finally, I ask that we prioritize accountability.
Ms. Metzler, you're going up and down in volume.
I'm sorry, I'm almost done. Finally, I ask that we prioritize accountability by tracking measurable outcomes and providing regular updates to the council and community. We can ensure this position delivers intended benefits. I would support the hiring provided the goals are clear and inclusionary. Thank you for your time. I look forward to seeing how this decision will shape the future of Pacific Grove business community. Thank you.
Anthony Tercel.
Yes, I would like to support this idea. I brought a business to Pacific Grove and have grown it over about 20 years, actually 24 years now. And I think what the Chamber person just said about accountability is really important. I think that's something we don't have now. Seems like it isn't working. Time to try something new. And as a business operator in the city of PG, I think it's a really good idea to have a liaison that's accountable and that's really trying to promote economic development and has that accountability feature. So wholeheartedly support this idea. Thank you.
Mr. Tercel. Anyone else, Sandra?
Yes, two more callers, Dixie Lane.
Good evening. I am here tonight to speak to the request made by the council member Pedori about the vote to sunset the EDC. As I understand it, this request is made without any formal notice to anyone, including the commissioners, the chamber, which I happened to run into Christy this evening, and she knew nothing about this, and our local businesses. Although, well, just regarding this agenda item, which asks the council to sunset the EDC, I asked that the council delay any decisions or on this particular motion until a future date so that we, the creatives and businesses, along with our partners and collaborators, might determine what we believe is the best way forward. I'm asking as someone who has worked successfully with the EDC when Jackie Atchison was chair and before her, Alan Cohen. And at that time, Mark Berdier was the EDD director. And at any rate, it was only after the EDC's focus was changed around 2018 that we found that it didn't serve the needs or goals for what support was needed by the community. I just want to remind people what the purpose of the BCCs are, and that is that they are appointed, the members are appointed by the mayor because the expectation is that these BCCs will meet with the community, gather the information, look at what's proposed that affects them, get their input, and report to him without staff interference. So I just say that because I think then if we look at why and how these were formed and their purpose, I think that makes a big difference. I hope you will consider our request to postpone this item while interested parties take time required to meet, discuss, and chart the way forward. In talking with Christy, we have always worked well together and have many ideas on how we can move things forward. And so we just need some time. So hopefully, let's come back to this sometime next year. Thank you.
And Inga Lawrence and Dimer.
Thank you. Mayor and council, I have watched EDC meetings for years and years and years here, back from Mark Brodeur's time, yes, when it was community and economic development. Well, that kind of fell flat, and a good thing, because he had too many hats on his head and who he wanted to support. I have watched it go up and down and flail, the EDC, over the years, from, oh, what color are our banners going to be, and the flower pots, and Adopt a Block was pretty good, but it didn't go far enough. And when we had, a lot of these were chamber things, they truly were, and we had a very strong CEO of the chamber at one point there for many years, who knew every business person and who knew every vacancy, and who, you know, I mean, that he really took his job seriously. And then we ended up with a supposed liaison, you know, a staff business liaison, what, 3 days a week or something, who certainly blew things. I mean, she made so many mistakes and didn't know ordinances, and literally put the city in, I think, a tenuous position many ways. And that was strictly through a lot of favoritism and manipulation. And I am afraid that the city paying for someone else is going to turn into the same thing, and that bothers me. The EDC, I don't think, has quite found its footing, because it seemed like a lot of commissioners up there have their own little agendas too, and they overlapped with things like special events and chamber events, and wanting the city to fund them. And so I am going to go right along with the other people of go back and look at other things and the real history of all of this, and come back next year with a better plan, because simply doing away with it, I don't think is the way. However, I will say that from watching these meetings, since we've had our present city manager, Matt Mogensen, who has, you know, been really, he intimated this was happening long ago at one of the meetings. So that said, it was there, the warning signs.
Thank you, Ms. Turner.
Thank you.
No further callers, Mayor.
Okay, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the council for discussion and action. Anybody wishing to speak? Councilmember Rao?
Thank you. I'll start. I think the first thing that we need to do is make it clear that we appreciate the service of the EDC, and this is not a reflection of their efforts. My concern is that they had some really great ideas and it never got traction with the previous council. And I think with support for the ADC, it's going to be more of the same. My other concern is that we have some other BCCs that may overlap in addition to the responsibility of the chamber. And I don't wonder if, you know, pumping the brakes here and taking a look at all of the boards and commissions and what can we perhaps combine to give them a clear direction as opposed to having, you know, the EDC, the BID and others that are all focused on, plus the chamber that are all focused on, you know, bringing business and activities into the city. So, I mean, I think maybe what we're looking for is a review of each one of the boards and commissions and deciding whether they should be expanded or contracted or combined. I do have a concern that you know, if the EDC members were not notified, then we could have had probably more robust comments, not just from the people that are on the EDC today, but people that have been on it in the past. So, you know, I think this needs to be more of a comprehensive decision as we review the boards and commissions. Thank you, Your Honor.
Oh, thank you, Councilman Brown. Councilmember Walkings.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack on this. We've actually got, it feels like 2 agenda items wrapped into one. First of all, thank you, Councilmember Pedori and City Manager Mogeson for putting this together. I see a lot of thought went into it, and I am very excited to see a business liaison being pitched. For clarity, that is for a full-time position. That is the concept, right? Yes. Okay, excellent. Yeah, I actually ran on this. I had this conversation, I don't know how many times over the last number of months, of actually being able to facilitate the business community, provide them a point of contact for helping to navigate everything with getting their business ramped up within our community and interfacing with the city and making that whole process easier. I think it's key, that position is key to making Pacific Grove, first and foremost, a more business-friendly environment, but then also have it perceived as a business-friendly environment so that we can attract more business. That being said, getting to the second part of this with sunsetting the EDC, gaming that out, just diving right into it. Were that to happen, there's a whole lot that the business liaison would take on. Responsibilities as far as boots on the ground, hands-on recommendations for how things could be improved from a very intimate position working with the businesses around town. The position that they would not be able to have, the thing they would not be able to do is recommendations on policies for the city itself. That would still be a big blank spot. They as a city staff member could provide recommendations on how things get done, procedure. You know, that is the field of city staff. But our side of things is policy. We create policy, they carry it out and enforce it. Putting that on to the city creates a kind of an inherent conflict of interest where you have the person who is carrying out and enforcing the policy also creating the policy. It creates a situation where they would have an incentive to do something that was more expedient or easy for themselves and not necessarily what was best for the community. That's the inherent conflict of interest there. So my thought on that would be we would still I would imagine we would want a commission, some sort of BCC that would still be providing recommendations on policy, a group that would still be providing a avenue for feedback from the business community. My immediate thought on that would be something like the Downtown Business Improvement District, where we've got a non-Brown Act committee that isn't requiring city staff time, but is still focused on solving these problems for the city council. Addressing Councilmember Rao's point of maybe this is time for a review of all BCCs. I think that might be a good idea for a couple of large overarching points. One is working out what our strategy is. What are we trying to accomplish with the BCCs? But two, providing clearer direction. How do we want to utilize each of these BCCs? What are we asking of them? It seems like some of the problems that have been brought up with the EDC, the failure there, sounded a lot like a failure of direction. They weren't clear, or they weren't given clear direction on what was required of them, what they were being tasked with. And I think if it was made clear that they were given a task for making recommendations on city policy and given clear timelines on, say, you have 6 months to create your rough draft, 3 months after that to create your second draft, and then at the end of 1 year, you provide a final document. That's clear direction. And I think any board could act on clear direction like that. So those are just my thoughts on where we're at so far. I cede the floor.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so I appreciate Councilmember Paduri for bringing this forward and kind of highlighting some of the challenges the EDC has been facing and some of the challenges the businesses have been facing potentially as a result of that. And I appreciate the public for bringing in some additional perspectives for us to view as well. So kind of melding what everyone said, it seems to me like the idea of the liaison is a really good one. It sounds like we need somebody who can actually be the person who can do something about the recommendations made by the board. But at the same time, I do see value in having people who can guide the recommendations and represent. And maybe we don't need an EDC, a BID, and an HID. And that would be something maybe it would make a lot of sense to look at the bigger picture of what's going to be the most efficient way to support our business community. Because our goal is to support our businesses, and per our charter, our businesses support our community. So it's all very important and very well entwined. So it seems to me we'd be best off to maybe not have the EDC have the budget, utilize that budget for the staff person so that EDC goals could actually be achieved, and then revisit or not revisit, but actually continue on with this discussion to determine, is the EDC the way to go? Is a combined type of committee the way to go? But rather than just dropping it all of a sudden, really assessing kind of the whole idea, what is the mission and the vision of each BCC? Do they overlap? Are they separate? And how can we best go forward in a way that best supports the community and our businesses? So that would be my recommendation, to go ahead and say, let's separate out that budget so that we can get a person on staff who can be the support person, be the liaison, so that we can actually accomplish anything that's recommended. And then as another step, like Councilmember Rouse suggested, maybe that's look at, I don't know if it's all boards and committees, or at least maybe very related ones, to see if they overlap, should be combined, or should each continue independently. So that would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and just
Your
jump in
Honor,
on this.
Can I just ask Councilmember Paduri one thing? What is the time frame for the sunset? I mean, typically a sunset is, forward, I don't know, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months.
So my view was the sunset was going to be immediate, but I hear the council, I hear the comments.
Can I, before we get that,
Go ahead.
because I feel like that's part of the greater discussion
Yeah.
for all of us. So I'll tell you that, I read this. I think this was a pretty visionary work here. This report was excellent. It's very well thought out. I think that it's challenging, kind of some of the things that we always think about. How do we best get the business community help that they need? I think that I actually believe that if we followed the recommendations, that it would probably end up better for the businesses. And I think that having someone dedicated to do the work is more efficient, and they could simply jump in and get help for these businesses. I think why are we in a rush? I think because businesses are hurting right now. I know restaurants are hurting right now. That we need to get the inflation. It was very damaging the last couple of years. We need to get help to them as soon as possible. And we have, that's this whole idea of, oh, we need more time. Well, we've had years of observations put forth by Councilmember Peduri, years of observing what was going on at this board. And I mean, I think to say, you know, we need this public input, I think we do get the public input. We don't, there's a way to get the public input without staffing an entire commission. I think that the public and the business owners would definitely have to be in touch with the liaison, but that is the definition of the liaison, is to accept the public comment, to talk to the businesses and make sure that they're getting the help that they actually need. So I see this as kind of like, you know, from a cost benefit perspective, I'm looking at this and I'm going, wow, this sure makes a lot of sense to me when I jumped off the page, to me as something that could be really helpful to help our businesses get help right now. I do think that, you know, the staff has our staff is getting smaller by the year due to the costs that we have to pay for pensions and salaries and growing costs and growing salaries and inflation and all of those other things. So because of all that, I think that we have to take that into consideration and say, you know, it's 12 hours a month. I don't think it is. I think it's much more than that. I think that's maybe just the time on the floor or talking to people. I think that this is far more than that, and the cost to our staff. And so this might just be one of those things where we don't have a BCC for it. And that it may be the case. We have a lot of them already for various other reasons. And I think the whole discussion of should we look at other BCCs, that's a different discussion than this. I think we're just, tonight, we simply just have to put the blinders on and say, well, let's look at the EDC itself for this item. And maybe that discussion in the future is another item where we take a look at all of them or whatever else when it's on the agenda, and we can look at that too. But for tonight, I think we have to decide about this EDC. You know, is this something we want to do going forward? And then bringing up the sunset period, would we give a sunset period of longer than immediate? The thing is that there are a bunch of appointments that are pending. So if we don't, the reason for sunsetting now, as I understand the report, is because there are all these appointments pending. And honestly, I think only one person has been appointed out of 7. So that is another administrative consideration, that we're having to appoint all these people and do all the paperwork related to that. So I think there are some strong reasons to go forward with this proposal tonight. And I saw something about separating out the budget because of the you know, I think the point for Councilmember Dury was the budget's not being used equitably. So certainly separating the budget from the body. I feel like we're not really reaching consensus yet on this topic yet, but those are kind of, I just want to get some of my thoughts out there and then recognize other folks to keep talking. Mayor Pro Tem Emilio.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilperson Dury, for the excellent presentation. I feel that, you know, I'm going to backtrack a little bit here. We did have a liaison with the other city manager that was here, and they worked, I think it was a day to 2 days a week downtown, trying to bring up more businesses. I want to kind of compare it to what we've done with ADU units, where we're aggressive on getting ADU units done. And that's what that person was doing, but the person has left. And so we've had a vacuum. I know I've changed my thoughts around, but I think we do need a liaison person full-time and get this person to not only deal with downtown Pacific Grove, which is going to be best for Pacific Grove, but also to look at Forest Street, the businesses there. I know there's a couple of empty spots on Forest Street. And I mean, look all over. For example, near Hayward Lumber Company, there's some spots down there. And there's been some empty buildings. And as we gather more businesses on, it's going to help our budget. we're gonna get some sales tax and similar to that. I believe, I know Council Member Baduri talked about sunset, and I think it needs to be sunset. I think we have to do what's going to be best for Pacific Grove and hire this liaison person to deal with all the businesses, not only downtown. I know that's very important, Lighthouse, et cetera, but I think it's important that we look at the whole town, rather than just what's going to happen on Lighthouse or even the side streets, Fountain. I know there's a couple empty buildings all over there. So we need to dedicate this person and appreciate the Economic Development Commission. I just think we need to move on. It's just sunsetted for now, and that's where I'm at.
Councilmember Rao?
I do have a question for Mr. Mogensen. Realistically, how long do you think it's going to take to recruit, hire, and onboard this person?
Realistically, so our first step would have to be to develop a job description and a salary survey that would have to be adopted into the city's salary schedule. From there, we would have to start a recruitment, so that's usually, 30 to 60 days, depending on how tough it is to find the people at this point in time. And we're looking for more of a specific, specialized background of a person. This isn't just a generalist who would take a job like this. It's something that somebody's usually an expert in at some level, or they've had some experience in it. So I'm going to say this, from, if you were to say today, we want to go this direction, it's with us adopting salary schedules, probably 4 to 5 months.
So really, realistically, we're looking at mid-year.
Realistically, it would probably be, hopefully ahead of that, but conservatively.
Okay. My issue is not with the hiring of the liaison. I think it's the right thing to do. My consternation here is eliminating the EDC. So, eliminated to the point where we're cutting it off right now with no notice to them, no notice to the public. I think that might be a little aggressive, and maybe we, let them go until we have the liaison on board. I think that might be one way to do it, but yes, I'm all in for the liaison, but I have a concern about the EDC.
Okay, so thank you very much for that comment. I know it's a great comment. The way I see it, everyone wants to hire the liaison. So that's like 6-0 on that one. So I think we just have to decide, are we sunsetting the EDC tonight? And if so, what's the sunset period? So, Councilmember McDonald, perhaps?
Yeah, I have something to say about that if I could.
Okay.
You have a municipal code, it's chapter, it's my job. It's chapter 3.40 and it's entitled Economic Development Commission, and section 340010 says that an Economic Development Commission for the city of Pacific Grove is created. So you have in your code an Economic Development Commission. So what you would need to do is adopt an ordinance to repeal chapter 3.40, and that of course requires a first reading and a second reading. The earliest the first reading could be is at your meeting on January 15th. And you could, if you want, from what I'm hearing, and I don't know if this is a consensus of the council or not, but if you're considering hiring someone to be your economic liaison, that you would want the EDC to continue their service to the city at least until the time that the liaison is hired. And you can certainly work out the math to figure out, what that date would be. So perhaps what could be done is if you're going to give direction to the city manager to recruit for that position, is that we see how that recruiting is going. And then once that date has been designated, then you could give direction to the city attorney to prepare an ordinance and bring it back, rather than say, let's do let's have the ordinance in January or February, whatever, kind of, I want to say artificial date you designate, maybe tie it to the date that the economic liaison person starts. And you may decide at some point that there's a benefit of an overlap with the economic liaison person, continuing, let's just say hypothetically starts in June, and maybe you want your EDC to continue until, July or August, so that it's not, a period where you, on one day, you hire the economic liaison person, and that same day the EDC it finishes its service. So those are your options. But I thought I should speak up and explain what would need to happen since your code, has created an EDC.
That's great. Thank you for that input. And that's going to help us a lot. So, Councilman McDonald.
Yeah, thank you for that. You actually covered a lot of what I was going to suggest is that I think it's important that knowing, and thank you for the question, Councilmember Rao, about how long it would take to bring somebody on, because I think that's very important to consider. And I would actually be in favor of having some overlap, because even if through discussion and assessment, we determine that the EDC maybe isn't the right direction going forward, because maybe there's a better way to do it, I think that needs to be a discussion that we have. And they have a lot of expertise. They've been working on this for some time. They've made recommendations. And I think there needs to be a transition. It's like when you have somebody leave a job, the new person comes in and has no idea where to start. That doesn't enhance efficiency. That actually is detrimental. So I would like to see some sort of handoff so that whoever comes on board in the position knows what the real issues are by people who've been working with the business community for some time. And then if we still decide that we don't need the EDC specifically, and there's a better way to do that, we could do that down the road and go towards the ordinance. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councilman Burry.
Yes, thank you. Just to clarify, city attorney's comments. So my understanding is with this going through a first read, second read, and there's a time lag here. Per the code, does that mean that the EDC appointments have to be filled while that ordinance is in process?
Well, I think what you would need to do is make a decision on the appointments, and perhaps make the appointment for something less than, a year. If what you, I'm not sure how much of an overlap, if any, you're talking about here, but if it's going to be a month or two, and we're just talking hypothetically here, but we have the flexibility, of course. If the direction of the council tonight is to, for the city manager to recruit for this business liaison staff member, then he can do that. And then we can come back, he can come back to the council and advise on his progress there. And then you could make a decision as to when you want the ordinance to be passed. But if the EDC is going to be continuing beyond January, they're going to need to have members. So there would need to be an appointment, and the appointment could be a short-term appointment. Perhaps you make it a 6-month or a 9-month appointment. That's your choice as to how long you'd want to make it.
In a follow-up to the code itself, so the only way to necessitate this is to repeal the code. Is that the right phrase? Or
yes, since the chapter 3.40 created the EDC, it would be involving a repeal of that chapter. But given that it's not going to happen tonight, if you want to give us a little latitude, I can confer with the city manager. We can go through the code and see if there's anything in here that, you would want to retain, or, perhaps it could be some parts of it could be included in the job description of the business liaison person. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to make decisions off the cuff, but if what I'm hearing from the council is, and I believe it's all of your direction, to direct the city manager to begin recruiting for the business liaison. So if that's what you're going to do, you could do that tonight, and then come back later and make a decision about when you want, and when the timing on an ordinance, and whether that ordinance would entirely repeal this chapter or do something other than that. I do note that in section 3.40030 is that the appointees are to serve a 2-year term. And then in 040, it says they may be removed prior to the expiration by a majority vote of the council. So basically, if you wanted to appoint them to 2 years, you could do that and then remove them, but that could be a little awkward. And I think a better choice would be to appoint them for some period of time that is your reasonable expectation of when this would come together. You could always, extend the appointment, if you will, to a later date. But I don't think you want to recruit potential applicants for the position and tell them it's a 2-year appointment, and then 6 months later say to them, well, we said it was a 2-year appointment, but it's really only a 6-month appointment. I think be upfront about it now that it's maybe call it a temporary appointment or a short-term appointment, however you want to phrase it, because I know, Mayor, you did say in your earlier comments that you were extending the time to apply until I think 5 o'clock this Friday. So whoever is listening and wishes to apply, they should understand that if they apply for the position of the EDC, there's possible that appointment may not be a 2-year appointment.
Sure, that totally makes sense. Councilmember Rao.
Yeah, and just to be clear for our edification and also for the public, if we vote to sunset this and say we make that vote in March, effective July, hypothetically, and we get a year down the line or less or more, and we decide that maybe this wasn't a good thing and we just bring back an ordinance to recreate it, right?
Yes.
So,
yeah, you can recreate it.
right. So I think, with that as a fail safe, I think, we can always reevaluate it. And if it goes, not well, we can come back and create another EDC.
It's a great comment. I'm going to try to figure out. Okay, so I think I'll entertain a motion at this time to direct the city manager to recruit for the position.
Kind of clarification, you had mentioned that the code actually says it's for a 2-year appointment, but then you recommended potentially doing a shorter appointment. So the code does allow us to do shorter than a 2-year appointment, or no?
Well,
So-
I mean, it seems that there's flexibility here. I mean, you could appoint them to a 2-year appointment because that's what your code says. So, you probably do what your code says. But I think they should be notified that the appointment, that they may, be removed. I mean, if we're going to be that formal about it, you can go to the next section, which says that they can be removed prior to the expiration of the term on a majority vote of the council. So, there's that. I don't think there's much risk in making the appointment for something shorter than 2 years to in the interest of transparency, so that those that are serving understand in the beginning that it's a short-term appointment. And I believe you do have that flexibility with your code. So I guess what you should decide is, because the mayor is going to need to make some appointments coming up in January. So I've heard the mayor start to make a motion about the direction of the city manager on the selection of the business liaison and recruiting. The other piece to that would be what you're pointing out too, Ms. McDonald, is what are we going to do on how long it should be? So either say 6 months, you could always extend the term, or 9 months or
Are
something.
we getting into like my prerogative to appoint and the council's prerogative to? I mean, so I think I will try to think about that when I make my appointments, if that's relevant at this time, and maybe put a term on it that's lesser than the normal 2 years, and then council can appoint such term. That might be one way to do it. That's just, I'm thinking out loud.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification, because I think letting people know up front what the expectation would be, or at least let them know that we're revisiting the EDC and whether to combine things would be valuable, just so they have appropriate expectations.
So the more we talk about it, I think I've convinced myself that appoint for 2 years with notice to the appointees that the council is considering revisiting the EDC in terms of a potential ordinance that would come back sometime later in 2025, which could end up resulting in a a shorter term.
Mhm.
And perhaps in a letter or however you choose to communicate that so that they aren't surprised on when all of a sudden they are told that it's not going to be a 2-year term.
Yes, Mr. Robinson, did you have a comment?
I did want to make sure we captured a couple of important things in all this discussion, but the first one I was just thinking is we're talking about appointments. As mentioned, we've currently only got one member who's been appointed to the EDC and they're appointed about a month ago. Everybody's going to be either filling the remainder of terms or you're going to be appointing for 2 years because the staggering's all messed up with the whole board needing to be reappointed. Something important though in this discussion that I think we need to be clear about is that I'm not recommending tonight that we have additional funds to hire this person. I'm recommending that we use these funds to hire this person. That's hopefully a distinction everybody's understanding. I don't know that our budget could handle hiring somebody by themselves. In addition though, because I think we could scrape together with all these funds we talked about here about closer to $100,000 if, using it all for that. There will still need to be more. And there's some thoughts that additional need of the city is to have somebody to focus on communications. So this could, we can cobble together a little bit more money to work on communications plus this, because I think the two things go well together. The last point I was going to make is just that since I've been here at the city, I've been trying to, I've been attending the meetings and I've been listening and I've been trying to understand how we can better help them to feel more effective. And one of the things that jumps out at me when we were reading the code is what the powers and duties are of the Economic Development Commission. And it quite possibly is not set up for them to feel enriched and successful the way it is today. If this board were to remain, maybe that's one of the first things that the board could do is, first of all, look at these powers and duties and say, what is really things that volunteer group could handle? And is it in their expertise? It is in their abilities to make those things come to life, because this is really what's being asked for them per the code, not probably everything else that's been, somewhat discussed. So I think that's kind of an important thing. If it lives on, we should make it so that it works for the city. For number one, is the council getting the recommendations that they need? And number two, is it things that can be done by a volunteer group of people so.
Well, okay, thank you very much. So I would say at this time, if we're still, I'm still in on the business liaison. The motion would be to direct the city manager to begin the recruitment process to separate the EDC budget and use that for the purposes of the recruiting and retaining that position. I think that would be the motion that we would need to make in order to move forward tonight.
Second.
Is that good enough to be, I was suggesting it, but it's fine if it's in my motion, I don't mind.
Yeah, I think that's one motion and maybe.
Right, but I know I'm trying to bifurcate this. I've been trying.
That's what I sense. So maybe
Okay.
vote on that one first.
Then I have a second now. So any further discussion on that? Councilmember Walking Stick.
Yeah, this is, as you stated it, Mr. Mogeson, this is not an either or, this is sunsetting the EDC is part and parcel of the hire of the liaison.
I think my comment was more directed at the EDC today. One of the main focuses is how do we use this $50,000 that's been put into the budget? And then that's been one of the main focuses. So if that's going to continue to be their focus, then we're not going to have the money to hire somebody.
So it's the EDC budget, the budget that's been given to the EDC for the projects.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you for the clarification.
Any further discussion on this motion? All right, we'll take it to a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that particular motion passes unanimously 6-0. And now, would at this time, any further motions? Would anyone like to make any motions relating to the sunsetting, or do we have enough direction to come back after we've seen how it goes with the position? I'm checking with the city manager. Do you have adequate direction? I know you're taking notes and this is kind of on the fly stuff, but do you have adequate direction to monitor, to try to do this and come back to us at a later time with a plan to move forward with the repealing or whatever we're going to do?
I think Mr. Mayor could use a little bit more help on that
Okay.
part of it to understand what the council's
That's
intention
fine.
is.
Okay. Councilmember McDonald?
Yeah, I was actually going to clarify with the city attorney too. So it sounded like the recommendation was that if we, since we're not sunsetting the EDC at this time, that we go ahead, do we need a motion to go ahead and say that we're going to do the 2-year appointments or whatever they may be? Because as you mentioned, some of them will be filling shorter terms. Do we need a motion just to notify people that this process is going on? And maybe it would even be something the EDC would take on to discuss the steps going forward. That would give them some. time to
I
do
think,
that.
I think a motion to that effect would be helpful because right now all you have is discussion here. So I think the motion would be to authorize the city manager to, excuse me, the mayor to make the appointment of individuals to the EDC at your meeting on January 15th for a 2-year term, and that the mayor would provide a letter to the individuals appointed that would explain that the city is going to be evaluating the EDC sometime in 2025, mid 2025, whatever words he chooses, and which may impact the length of their service. I mean, I can work with him on the language, but that's the essence of it, because I think it's important that whoever gets appointed is on notice that it might be only something shorter than 2 years.
Okay, I think it's fine. I'll accept that if you guys want to make that motion. But I think Mr. Mogensen may want more additional direction.
Made a motion that at some trigger point in time, we would bring this evaluation back to you. That would probably be most helpful.
Okay,
So-
well, the trigger point would probably be the time of hiring, but, or time there, or thereabouts, which we don't really know.
Okay.
Can I,
Yeah, go ahead.
can I suggest something? I would suggest the trigger point be whoever we're hiring, review the EDC and come back to the council with their recommendation on whether the EDC needs to be sunset or not.
Yeah, that might be a little, that's putting a brand new person in quite the spot, isn't it?
But that's their duty. So, so having said that, that needs to be the trigger point. I would say the hire process needs to coincide with whatever decision we're making here. So
Okay.
I would be supportive of that.
Okay.
Councilmember Rao?
So just to clarify to the city attorney, how long between the first reading, taking the action, how, in order to change the ordinance? I mean, what are we looking at? Are we looking at a month, 2 months?
I'm about to answer your questions.
Excellent.
You have a first reading and then the second reading, and these should happen both at a regular meeting rather than a special meeting. So typically when we adopt ordinances, let's say it's at the first meeting of the month, that would be the what they call the first reading or the introduction of the ordinance. Then we come back at your next meeting, so 2 weeks later, you would have the second reading or the adoption of the ordinance. And then 30 days after the adoption of the ordinance would become effective. You could have some flexibility if you wanted with the ordinance to have a date longer than 30 days, but it could not be effective any sooner than 30 days.
So realistically, the whole process is 60 days-ish,
No,
45,
I think it's less than that. I think it's 2 weeks plus 30.
45.
6 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't know that you need to pick that date now, but I do think that if you want me, Mayor, to try to take a shot at what the motion is, the motion would be that the mayor would appoint individuals to the EDC for a 2-year term consistent with your code, and provide them with a letter explaining that the appointment is for 2 years, but their service may not be for 2 years if the council makes a decision with respect to the future of the EDC at some point in 2025.
That's one motion. And then are we also going to make a third for, well, anyway, I'll make that my motion. Does it have a second for that?
I'll second that.
Okay, then we'll just take the vote and then I'll bring this back up. Any further discussion on that point? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. That second motion passes unanimously 6-0. Now, coming back to my original thought on this was, do we need an additional motion that talks about the trigger point? Okay, excellent. Well, if there are no further comments, I think this item is, we fully analyzed it. Thank you very much. Good job. And thank you for the input from the public, and we do very much appreciate the service of all of our BCC members. So that's not, we're just trying to do what's best for the city in our views and do what we can. And that is all I have for the evening. And thank you very much for being with us tonight. Thank you everyone in Chambers for hanging with us this long and online. And this meeting is now adjourned, and happy holidays to everybody.